There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a formal welcome to Kabbalah and Coffee. Sunday, November 21st, 2021. This is a very special week, right? It's the week of Thanksgiving, which I always feel like, in America, we have special days for things, right? But in reality, every day should be Thanksgiving, right? Every day that we wake up in the morning, we should offer thanks. Modani, we offer thanks and gratitude for being here. Every day, like Mother's Day is once a year. Nah, Mother's Day is every day, right? Every day is Mother's Day. Every day is really, in essence, a holiday, a holy day, if we just choose to open our eyes and be connected to that energy. So today we're going to speak about some primordial realities that Kabbalah develops, or Kabbalah reveals and expresses, and see what it has to do with our lives. And I think in this process, we're going to walk away with some powerful information. A lot of this stuff that we're going to explore at the beginning is stuff that some of you perhaps have heard, but as we expound on it today, I think we're going to have, certainly some new information. By the way, before we get started into the content, I want to hold up this brand new copy of Tanya. This is Tanya Bilingual Edition, Intown Jewish Academy Commemorative Edition. As you can see here, this is what we're going to be giving out tonight at our 19th of Kislev celebration. Tonight at 6 p.m. right here. It's a free event open to everyone, and you get a free Hebrew-English copy of Tanya. And why that's significant, come tonight to find out, because we're celebrating the 19th day of Kislev. Yes.
The burgundy color.
The burgundy color, I don't believe there's significance to it, but I could be wrong. Although, one second, I think the Alter Rebbe's books, the founder of Chabad's books, I think the covers, many of them are in that burgundy color. Why that burgundy color? I don't know, but I think maybe there is some sort of connection. But back to our story of the primordial realities. So Kabbalah teaches that before the reality that we know existed, there was another reality. And this is called the world of Tohu. What is Tohu? Tohu is chaos. Where does this word Tohu come from? It comes from the Bible. First few verses of the Bible, of the Torah, it says that the earth, v'ha'aretz, haisa, tohu v'vahu, the world was empty and void. V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei adama, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the earth, or what would become the earth. But anyway, the Torah tells us, the Bible says that the world itself, there was the state of desolateness, does that make sense? And emptiness and chaos. Tohu vavohu. Kabbalah explains that this realm, this state of Tohu, was actually a state of reality that preceded our state of existence called Tikkun. So we live in a world that's called Tikkun. As you may be familiar with the phrase Tikkun Olam, to repair the world. We live in a world that's entire why and wherefore is all about Tikkun. It's all about repair, right? It's all about fixing and mending and healing. But there was another world in which the energy was very different. It wasn't a healing energy. It wasn't a fixing energy. It was a chaotic energy. The truth is, you need something to be broken before you can fix it, right? I mean, you can't, if there's nothing broken, you can't fix it. So this is why, right, Kabbalah understands that before a realm that's all about fixing and healing, you have a realm that's all about chaos and brokenness. So what is the nature of this realm of Tohu, this realm of chaos? Let me explain. And I'm going to give you the language of Kabbalah, and then I'll explain it hopefully in human terms. So in the language of Kabbalah, it's called a world where the lights are big and the vessels are small. That's the language of Kabbalah. The light is big and the vessels are small. What are vessels? Vessels are containers. So you could picture like a physical vessel and physical light, but that's not really doing justice to this idea. It's the notion of big light and small vessel could be understood on any level. You could think about water. One of my favorite examples to give on this topic is a fire hose, like a powerful hose, and a paper cup. Yeah, you power the water, the force of water into that cup. What's going to happen? The cup explodes. Not only do you not have water in the cup, you don't have a cup. You with me on this? There's no cup anymore. Yeah. You tell an idea. You take a 7-year-old, and Albert Einstein begins lecturing to a 7-year-old. Yeah. Not only is a 7-year-old not going to understand anything, assuming Albert Einstein is teaching on his level, right? Not only is a 7-year-old not going to understand anything, he's going to be very confused, right? The eye takes in too much physical sunlight. Not only is it not beneficial, more light the better, it's worse. Cameras, remember those old school cameras? Yeah, the ones with film. You guys remember film? Came in a little canister. You guys remember that? Those were the days. Those were the days. Okay, I think film photography is back, sort of, right? Like vinyl. Yeah, I'm actually considering bringing my vertical record player tonight to the 19 Kislev celebration to plug in some old tunes, record of Hasidic tunes. I'm contemplating, or I could just pull it from Spotify. I'm contemplating one of these two options. Anyway, but film, yeah. So in order to create an image, you need light. Too much light, and your whole image is washed out, and you have nothing. There's nothing there. It's just light. We've all had that experience back in the day of accidentally opening up the back of the camera, and your film gets exposed. Yes, remember that? Boom, your pictures are gone. These are much easier. So Tohu, the world of chaos, is a world in which there's a lot of light and not a lot of vessel. The lights are big, the vessels are small. And in that situation, in that context, in that scenario, we have what Kabbalah calls shviras hakelim, the shattering of the vessels. The vessels actually break, they explode, they split apart, the shards of which we are trying to fix. That is what Tikkun Olam is in the original Kabbalistic sense. Tikkun Olam is repairing the shards of the broken vessels that contain sparks of holiness that have been shattered now and embedded across the world. It's like a video game, almost, right? Where you're on a mission to seek out whatever it is, right? You're seeking out coins or whatever. Think of Super Mario Brothers on my Game Boy in the 80s. Remember that? Remember that? Anyway, I was more of a Tetris guy, but Super Mario Brothers also got played. Here's the deal. You're seeking out different, secret things in different places. That's the job, the spiritual job that we are here for in the realm of Tikkun. But before Tikkun, before the world of repair, came the world of chaos, the world of Tohu, where the lights were big, the vessels were small, and it shattered. Let's speak about this on a personal level. What does that mean? Because before I explain what it is on a personal level, let me explain to you the significance of this. There's a verse that says, I think it's from Proverbs, Gam es ha'olam nasan belibo shel adam. The world too was given in the heart of the human being. Gam es ha'olam, also the world, Natan, was given belibo shel adam, in the heart of a human being. Which means that the universe, the macrocosm, exists inside the microcosm of the human experience. If it exists out there, it exists in here. This is a major Kabbalistic truth. So if there are two realms of chaos and repair in the larger universe, there are these two realms of chaos and repair in our micro-universe, the micro-universe of the human being, of the human biosphere. And the way we understand this is the distinction between emotions and intelligence. Emotions are chaos, intelligence is repair. Let me explain, right? You talk about the idea of big light and small vessels. Sounds like emotions, right? Emotions are big and oftentimes volatile. Oh, I should mention, big light, small vessel that leads to shattering of the vessels. You know what this sounds like? Emotions. Emotions are big. Sometimes they're bigger than what we know what to do with, right? They're so big often that we can't process it fully. We can't fully deal with the emotions. Whether it's joy, whether it's love, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness. Emotions are oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes very big, and they can be very volatile. Correct? Present company excluded, obviously, but right? No, the truth is, no, present company included, because it's actually a feature, not a flaw, of emotions that they're very big and very powerful. They're big, they're loud, they're strong, and honestly, when you're feeling an emotion, really feeling an emotion, the complement or the balancing emotion that might help temper it, when I say temper, not like temper anger, but like that might help quell the emotion or bring the emotion down to earth, you don't feel it. It's like any sort of, when you're feeling angry, a sense of, compassion or a sense of love, that's out the window in that moment, in that full experience, because you're feeling that emotion and it's completely isolated, or it feels isolated, and it's so big, and it can become volatile. Again, this is true even in love. I've said this many times. We use the expression falling in love. We don't say walking in love, gliding in love, sauntering in love. We don't talk about strolling into love. We talk about falling in love. Why falling? Falling denotes this idea of something larger than what can be reasonably processed. It's big and it's grand, and sometimes it can take us by surprise. Oftentimes it does take us by surprise, and it can bring out, oftentimes it's a bigger experience than what we can normalize in a traditional sense. It's not a bad thing, it could be a good thing, but it's a big thing. So that is a little bit about emotions. Emotions are big. Emotions can be very volatile. What's interesting is that alongside emotions, we've also been given intelligence. And intelligence is the exact opposite from emotions. Intelligence, right? Our minds are rational, logical, hopefully, right? Rational, logical, methodical, thought out. Our minds are very linear. We think of things through, again, hopefully. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. So whereas emotions like spring up right in the, like full-blown emotion out of nowhere, it just like pops up, our intelligence is very rational and very plotted out. It's very organized. This is symbolic, or this is a mirror of the realm of Tikkun, the realm of repair, where the light is small and the vessels are large. In the realm of Tikkun, you have reasonable, manageable realities. The light, again, is cut down to size. It's a smaller amount of light. The vessel's very large. It can contain the light. Again, this is like a metaphor. The light is not literally light, but it's the concept of it can contain the light. And when it comes to intelligence, our rational minds, this is very much in line with that. Our rational minds are very able to, we can think of things in a logical fashion and organize our thoughts, and things make sense, and things can be made to make sense. Vis-a-vis the emotions, we find something very interesting. And that is that in a healthy system, in a healthy human system, the mind is meant to control the heart. So instead of allowing the emotions to run away from us, or run away with us, or take us on a ride, whatever sort of cliche we want to use, the goal is that we use our mind, we use our rational mind to temper the emotions, to kind of rein in the emotions so that they don't get too big to handle, right? That's the goal. And there's a phrase that's actually brought in Tanya, that's brought in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, and that is moach shalat al halev, which translates to the mind controlling the heart. Now, this is not mind control in the sense of someone controlling someone else's mind. This is mind control in the sense of one controlling one's own mind, that we're in control of our thoughts to the point that we can then mediate, if you will, our own emotions. So that when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling angry, when we're feeling a little bit too, buoyant, maybe if there's ever such a thing as too buoyant, but whatever, if there's an emotion that's getting a little bit too carried away, we can use our rational mind to kind of temper things and bring things back down to earth in a healthy fashion. So this is really the interplay between mind and heart that exists in a healthy context. So one example, one image that might be helpful is the idea of a pet dog. Why do I say a pet dog? Because in Kabbalah, it's interesting. A dog in Hebrew is called kelev. Kelev is a combination of kulo lev or kol lev. Kulo lev, which means all heart. So a dog, again, I'm not wading into the cat versus dog thing. That's beyond my pay grade. That's not for now. But a dog is said to be very emotive, very excited, right? Very warm and very excitable and very emotional. Picture a person walking their dog. Yeah. What's going on? You have the person who hopefully is in control, walking their dog, taking the dog where the person either wants to go or where they know that the dog needs to go. Picture another scenario where the dog is walking the person, right? That's where you might have like a big dog and a small person, and the dog is like, schlepping, dragging the person where it wants to go. And obviously, that's a situation where you got to get a smaller dog or you got to get stronger, because you can't be dragged around the belt line, dragged on the asphalt, the cement, whatever it is. It's just dangerous, right? It's not a healthy situation. If your dog gets very excited when it sees another dog and it's going to run toward the other dog, but you don't want it to run and you can't hold that dog back, that could be a dangerous situation, right? I'm not a dog owner, but I'm assuming that could be a dangerous situation. Maybe, at least potentially. So what's the point? The point is that it's in a healthy scenario, it's the human that's walking the dog. Again, I'm using this as a metaphor. The human would be intelligence, the dog would be emotions, and it's healthy when the intelligence is walking, the dog is walking the emotions, when our minds are guiding our emotional disposition. When our emotions are guiding our mind, that's when the dog is walking the person. That's an unhealthy situation. What that looks like is, and this is even more potentially problematic than just feeling big emotions. This is where we feel big emotions, and to justify the big emotions, we begin rationalizing the big emotion. You with me on this? That's when the mind is conforming to the heart. So the heart feels, let's use anger. Let's use a clearly negative emotion, anger. Parenthetically, Maimonides writes in Hilchot Deot, which means it's his chapters on human character and character development. He says that in general, when it comes to various characteristics, character dispositions, there's a range. There's a range from one extreme to the other, right? So for example, with giving, so a person could be, not giving at all or giving everything. Like there's a big range of giving. So the Rambam says, Maimonides says, in general, find the extremes and then try to get to the middle, right? Not extreme this way, not extreme that way, to the middle. That's a healthy balance, a healthy balance. He says, when it comes to anger, go all the way to the other side against anger. He said, anger is the exception. Typically, we find the middle. When it comes to anger, run away as far as you can from anger, because anger, by the way, it doesn't mean that you can never become, indignant or, recognize that something is wrong and troubling needs to be fixed. All of that is healthy. But anger, rage, that sort of emotion, that's not healthy. And I think we can recognize that as unhealthy, even if we recognize that as human beings, that is something that we need to deal with on occasion. Nonetheless, we can recognize at the same time that it's not a healthy thing. So when it comes to anger, I'm just using this as an example, because it's, again, as Rambam Maimonides says, it's a clearly identifiable negative emotion. So when it comes to anger, a person might feel anger. Again, naturally, it sometimes happens, but then go ahead and use the mind to justify the emotion. That's when the dog is walking the person. You with me on this, right? That's when I feel the anger, I feel the rage, and then I come up with a whole explanation, a whole rationalization of why this is justified and it makes sense, and it's holy anger, and it's justified anger, and it's righteous anger, etc. And therefore I'm allowed to be in the state of anger or resentment or whatever it is. And we know that all of these emotions, not all, but some of these negative emotions are toxic more to ourselves than to anyone else. And it really is in our own best interest to not have that anger, let alone for the other person, but more importantly, perhaps for ourselves, it's unhealthy to be stewing in a state of anger and resentment. I think there's a phrase that says resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other one's going to die, which that doesn't work, right? So being in control of our emotions means that we're using our mind to guide, to mentor, to mediate the emotions, and not the other way around, to justify the emotions, right? When it's justifying the emotions, we're putting the emotions first and the intelligence behind. When it's leading the emotions, we're putting the intelligence first and the emotions behind, and that's a healthy construct. But if you look at it just with a clear and blank slate, you would say that the emotions, one might justifiably argue, you might say that the emotions are necessarily more powerful or inherently more powerful than the mind. But the emotions are very powerful, very volatile, very, lots of feelings, and the intelligence, cold and calculated, and and you would think if you put them in a cage match or in the octagon, right? You pit emotions versus intelligence, right? One-on-one. Forget them working together. No, you pit them against each other. Who's going to win the cage match? Who's going to win that? You would think emotions. And in truth, this lines up with the mystical, the Kabbalistic understanding of Tohu and Tikkun, where Tohu precedes Tikkun. Tohu is considered to be a more powerful realm, a more powerful reality. Even though it ends in the shattering of the vessels, it's considered to be a more powerful reality. Where the lights are big, the vessels are small. It's a powerful reality is the world of chaos. The world of repair is like, a little bit more calm, a little bit more rational and normalized and organized. But Tohu, not excited, more rational, figuring out how to best, put the pieces together. It's like doing a puzzle. If you're very emotionally wound up in doing a puzzle, you're going to throw in the pieces, right? You have to be methodical. You got to, work your corners, work your edges. At least that's my strategy, right? And then call the kids to finish it. Yeah. Anyway, right? So you gotta be thought out when you do this. When you're in the realm of repair, and when you're in the realm of chaos, all bets are off. And indeed, it seems that the world of chaos is stronger than the world of repair. Tohu is more powerful than Tikkun. Chaos is more powerful than repair, which might lead us to believe that our emotions are ultimately or could ultimately be out of our control to rein in. And those we're talking about reining in our emotions with intelligence. But the question now becomes, who says we can't? Maybe the emotions are simply too strong for us to rein in intellectually. Maybe in the physical example the analogy of the dog, maybe the dog is too big for us to walk, to handle. The leash is too weak. The person is too weak. The dog is too big and strong. Maybe that's it. This is where we're up to in our conversation in a discourse number 13, chapter, let's see what chapter we're up to, chapter 2. This is the last, yeah, hold on. We're gonna get to questions in a second. I just want to kind of lead into to what we're up to. This is where we're up to right now. and we're in the process of asking a question, and that is the premise that we've been developing is to say that the human being has the ability to overcome temptation, to overcome inner challenge, to overcome, the inner distractions that try to pull us in various directions. We're asking now, who says maybe that inner desire, that inner emotional desire is bigger than what we can reasonably rein in, especially since it comes from the realm of Tohu, does that temptation, desire, that emotion. And what's trying to rein it in is only coming from Tikkun, from a lower realm or a latter realm, the realm of repair. So that's what we're up to in the question. I'm going to develop that in a moment a little further. But Toba, I see that you have a question. Jump in.
Well, I can think of times in my life, even some minor things, where I let my intelligence or whatever, my rational mind overcome my emotional. And I should have gone the other way.
You're saying you should have followed your heart.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to know when the heart is leading us in the right way. We have to also know when the heart's leading us. I'm not suggesting, thank you for pointing that out and for allowing the clarification. I'm not suggesting that all emotions are necessarily negative and need to be pushed down. No, there are many good emotions, healthy emotions, and healthy instinct and, gut, feelings and intuitions and that sort of thing that we need to follow. We have to discern, we have to have the ability to know when it's a healthy emotion, when it's an unhealthy emotion. That's another type of discernment where the mind would come in and say, hold on, this is healthy, this is positive, this is a good feeling, let me cultivate it. As opposed to, this is a negative feeling, let me work on minimizing that feeling. How do we have the wisdom to know to distinguish between one and the other? Good, that's another question, but that's a very important piece of it. But yeah, not all emotions are negative. No, not on the contrary. Emotions are very important. It's not like we've been given emotions for the sole purpose of taking the wind out of their sails and becoming, mechanical robots. That's not what Kabbalah or Hasidic philosophy is trying to tell us. Emotions are good. Emotions are valuable. But at the same time, if it's a negative emotion, right, then we have to have the ability, or then the work begins to work with that, to mitigate it. Yaakov.
Well, just for Tova's question, fear is very difficult to figure out. Are we listening to the, universal inferiority complex, or are we being warned of impending harm? It's
right.
very, very difficult.
Right. Fear is a very important protection for a human being to be able to keep a human being safe. At the same time, if fear is getting in the way of us accomplishing what it is that we need to do in life, then it can become debilitating, or maybe debilitating is a too strong of word, but it can become an impediment to if a person is afraid, right, to take on a challenge or start the business that they know they want to start, but they're like, if the fear is getting in the way of natural progress, then that fear needs to be worked with and tempted to be pushed away. If it's a healthy fear, then we need to listen to that fear. To, again, along the lines of what I said to Toba, we have to have the wisdom to be able to discern between one and the other.
And then there was one other question, just when you said the broken worlds and I guess those the Sephirot, are those could that be the Big Bang and all the shards of the planets, physical shards versus emotional shards?
I don't know how it intersects with various theories about the origins of the universe. I don't know. I mean, I hear that it is interesting that there is a theory about a Big Bang and an explosion, and Kabbalah for 2,000 years has been talking about a primordial reality that explodes. But it's beyond my pay grade to go beyond that noticing that and to say, these actually do intertwine, and one speaks of the spiritual element of a physical phenomenon. That would be speculation on my part. And I would prefer to stick with what it says in the books as opposed to telling you my own theories. So I can't. Yeah, Imbo. Yeah, we might be able to bring in Dr. Imbo from Chicago to speak about that. He may have some theories about that, but I don't know. But it's a good question. I feel like there was a question here. Did somebody have a question? Yeah, Darren.
Yeah, so are you familiar with this place? They got this place in Colorado, and it's called the Institute of Heart Math. Is it better?
No.
Heart Math.
Heart Math.
Well, anyway, so what they do is they study the heart. It sounds exactly like the scientific side of what you're saying, and they discovered that the heart has these things called sensory neurons, which are like mirror brain neurons. And it's literally the exact same thing you're saying. They're talking about how you need to make a choice on how you feel, and you go in and get this positive emotion, and then you build that out, and it affects the electromagnetic field around your body and stuff like that. But my question is, they're talking about, they found scientifically that the heart actually is sending more information up to the brain than the brain is sending back down to the heart.
Interesting.
Now they don't know what that information is. They're just saying from a neural standpoint, information is going more up from the heart than down from the brain. So I wonder if that's what you're saying, like thinking about bigger.
It's more powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat what Darren said so that everybody can hear online as well. So there's studies that are happening in Colorado, and I believe also elsewhere, that are recognizing that the heart has also some type of neurons or some sort of like what we would consider like intelligence, that the heart also has, emotionally also has some sort of intelligence. And the goal is to be able to mindfully, work with that. But the information, what Darren pointed out, interestingly, is that it seems like there's more information being sent from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. Maybe that ties into this idea that the emotions stem from the world of Tohu, of chaos, which is a bigger, more powerful, what we might say more influential realm than the world of Tikkun, the world of repair, which is more the intellectual world. Very interesting. I mean, again, it's hard to say exactly how that plays out on a physiological level, but it sounds like that could be speaking, kind of to the same idea. I am familiar a little bit with that idea about the heart being able to have some sort of intelligence. It's interesting because Kabbalah speaks of the intellectual powers and the emotional powers, and it talks about, literally in ancient Kabbalah, it talks about the mind of the heart and the heart of the mind. It talks about the feelings of the mind and the intelligence of the heart. And it says that each has elements of the other within it. In other words, not only are there two distinct buckets and categories, intelligence and emotions, but each one also has elements of the other. In fact, we discussed this in a previous Kabbalah and Coffee text. This is one that we did, I believe it was in 2020. We were doing it all on Zoom. This was in the course that we did called Learning How to Love. I think in Learning How to Love, we spoke about there the crossover that exists between the various intellectual and emotional dispositions.
Right.
But be that as it may, there's this power of the heart, the power of the emotion that is very real. And oftentimes it could feel that the mind doesn't stand a chance. When we're angry, when we're afraid, sometimes it feels like the deck is stacked and there's no way around it. So I want to jump in and read this.
Rabbi?
Yeah, Yaakov, jump in.
Yeah, there might be a third area of knowledge besides that, volatile heart, and then the intellectual but maybe uninspired mind, which is the body.
Oh, you're saying yeah. Well, so what's interesting is that in addition to the intellectual abilities and the emotional abilities, there is then this sort of judge, the arbiter, the great judge that's us, right? Part of us that kind of decides how we're going to proceed. Are we going to exercise, the mind to control the heart? Are we going to let the heart, do its thing? You can call it the body, you can call it, I don't know, something else, but there is this other element that necessarily is doing the deciding, because each one left to its own devices would make its own choice, but we're the ones that are kind of working between these two different options. Okay, so let's pull this up inside. I believe I read this paragraph at the end of last week's session, and I said we're going to start again and kind of like reset it because it's very, very powerful, and we went through it pretty quickly. So we're on page, we're going to start again, this one paragraph, bottom of 196. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. It's on page 196, bottom 2 lines, bottom paragraph there. I'm going to pull it up for the Zoom. Okay, I'm going to start reading. He says, the problem of dealing with our out of control temptations, desires, emotions. The problem is even more apparent when we explore the origin of the two souls being the higher soul, the lower soul, the godly soul, the animal soul, higher self, lower self. He says the animal soul, which by the way is synonymous with emotions. The animal soul is like that dog. Again, there's nothing wrong with the dog. We're not saying it's evil, God forbid, or it's bad. It's just powerfully emotional and powerfully instinctual and powerfully reactive. So the animal soul, he says, is rooted in Tohu, right? Tohu, that's the world of chaos, the emotional world, page 198 now. While the godly soul, which is marked by intelligence and rationality, the godly soul is rooted in Tikkun, the world of repair, which is on an objectively, I'm adding those words, an objectively lower plane than Tohu. The way it works, not only chronologically, not only in, which came first, the Tohu or the Tikkun. The answer is Tohu, chaos came first. But it's also in degree of power. Tohu is a powerful world of, just big lights. It's brash, it's big, it's bold. And Tikkun is little light, large vessels, but little light. So Tikkun is lower, and it's written. Now this is pretty interesting. The verse here is from the Torah portion that we just read yesterday in synagogues around the world. It says, "These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before a king ruled over the children of Israel." And the Kabbalists explain, the mystics explain, that these represent the 7 primordial kings of Tohu. If you saw my email, these are the kings of chaos, the kings of Tohu that preceded Tikkun. So there's a biblical verse that talks about kings in Edom before kings of Israel. Great. What does that mean for us? I don't know. There were these kings before those kings. But Kabbalah says Edom represents, the 7 kings of Edom represent the 7 emotions of the 7 chaotic emotions: love, discipline, compassion, ambition, humility. Each one of the connectivity and leadership. Each of these 7 emotions could be very big, brash, and bold and chaotic, even though in and of themselves they're healthy emotions, they're positive emotions, but they can be amped up so much that they become a little bit overwhelming and chaotic. So the verse that says that there were kings in Edom before the kings of the children of Israel, that represents the chaos that precedes the order. So he concludes this paragraph with a question. The ability of the godly soul, which is marked by intelligence, rationality, it's methodical, it's thinking things through. The ability of the godly soul to master, it means to control, to rein in. The animal soul, which is volatile and big feelings, is all the more puzzling. How is it possible for the godly soul to master, to control the animal soul, if the animal soul is coming from Tohu and the godly soul is coming from Tikkun? This is in addition to the questions we asked last time. The question we asked last time was, the animal soul is influencing the human being well before the godly soul influences the human being. We're born with a very active animal soul. Again, not bad, but a very active drive to protect self, As I said last time, a baby cries. When a baby is born, baby cries, baby's hungry. None of this is not a judgment. It's not a judgment. It's all good, but it feels itself. The first notion is self. It hasn't yet developed a sense of selflessness. It hasn't developed a sense of, oh, my mom wants to sleep. I'll eat soon. Let her sleep a little bit more. Doesn't even exist in the calculus of the young child, of the baby, of the child. The first sense is, I need me. It is what it is. It's not a judgment. It's just that's the fact. It's only later that we develop a sense of me as part of a larger group, either a family or a community or a world, where I feel now responsibility to something other than myself. And maybe I can put myself aside for the sake of the larger or the other. That all that comes later as we mature. So when it comes to a question of what I want versus what is wanted of me, or what someone else wants, or what I should be doing on some sort of higher level, his question really is, how is it ever possible to make the right choice? How is it ever possible to be expected to make the right choice? If that influence, that self-driven influence, is embedded in our psyche, in our entire being from the moment we're born, and that other learned ability to give of ourselves, to do the right thing, to control what we want for what's wanted of us, that only comes later, then how are we ever expected necessarily to be able to overcome that first desire, that base personality type of the selfish type, and exercise the control over that? And that's the first question. And layered on top of that is the fact that the instinctive self, the instinctual self, the emotional self comes from the realm of Tohu, the chaos, the big light, and the Tikkun, the rational self, the giving self, comes from Tikkun, a smaller, less light, lower realm, secondary realm. Yeah. You wouldn't need to repair if there wasn't chaos. Right. Which one? The chaos? Right. The chaos is not a bad thing. It's a thing. It could be bad. Feeling a lot of love is good. Could also go too far, right? Too much love could also be dangerous, right? Discipline is good. Having boundaries is good. Having rules, it's all good. But too much discipline could lead to harshness, right? Everything is good up to a certain point. When it's too big, it could get negative. It's kind of like, if you just think about, like, in a room, you put a bunch of people with like very big personalities, they might not get along with each other because everyone's got a really big personality. It's the way it works. So in Tohu, you had a room with all big personalities, and just the room wasn't big enough to handle all these personalities. Boom, the party went south. The party just doesn't end well. It's too big. Tikkun, much more measured. But the real question is like this. We started off this entire this discourse 13, by explaining, look, we have a simple theme throughout this book, and that is that we tell ourselves, there's a thought process that allows us to get into trouble. And if we can identify that thought process and interrupt it, we can stay out of trouble. So what's the thought process that gets us into trouble? So here's one. We have different ones. Here's the one that we're focusing on now, is where a person says, look, I would love to not do this, but I can't not do this. Like, it's too strong. The urge is too powerful. I'm too wired this way. It's just who I am. I have to do this. So he said, interrupt that and tell yourself you can be in control. But now he's asking, who says you can't? Maybe you can't. Maybe it's really more powerful than what you can control. Maybe it precedes the ability to control. There's this, this inherent, this natural desire that precedes the control, and it comes from Tohu versus Tikkun. So who says we can be in control? So let's now answer this and come to some sort of resolution. and wrap up this piece of the conversation. So now we're on 198 in the middle where it says the godly soul rules. In truth, however, and here we now flip everything that we've said, we flip it on its head. In truth, however, in their sources, I'm going to explain this in a moment, in their sources, in other words, in the ultimate source, the godly soul, that's the higher self, the rational self, does have precedence over the animal soul. Even though we just said before that the world of chaos precedes the world of order, but in the source, order takes precedence. We learned earlier, Discourse 10, chapter 2, that the Seder Hishtalshalut is a Kabbalistic term that refers to the entire spectrum of existence, like from the highest spiritual realm to this physical world. So Seder Hishtalshalut means like the whole shebang, like everything in existence. So we learned before that that Seder Hishtalshalut is rooted on a plane higher than itself in the inwardness of Makif. In other words, think of it this way. Think of it as you're on a cruise in Alaska. Okay? You're on a cruise in Alaska and you see coming out of the water, you see like what looks like almost like a majestic mountain, right? What do we call that? Glacier? Yes? Glacier? Iceberg?
Iceberg.
Iceberg? It's not just lettuce? Okay. Sorry, we have iceberg. Yeah. And you're looking at it, it's magnificent, it's tall, but you know that as big as whatever it is that's sticking out of the water, you know that there's a lot that's beneath the surface as well, right? Beneath the surface. The truth is sometimes you don't see anything much. Is this the Titanic? Isn't that what happened to Titanic? Yeah.
It's an expression, the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg. Good. Tip of the iceberg. Perfect. Such wise people who created these phrases. Tip of the iceberg, right? You have a little bit that's sticking out, but there's a whole thing beneath it. So the same thing is true when it comes to the universe. So there's the revealed universe. And this refers to even the spiritual realms that you and I don't see, but are revealed. But there's the way the universe comes out in expression, right? But then there's the deep-rooted source beyond what is manifest. Again, even spiritually. It's the source of the spiritual realms, like in preceding emanation, like in its core. And he says on that level, let's actually go to the next page. No, okay, so I'll just say it outside. And on that level, Tikkun precedes Tohu. It's like a mirror. Think of a mirror. Think of a mirror. How's a mirror going to help? Does a mirror help here? I'm not sure. But what looks closer, is this going to work? Yeah, I think it's going to work. Imagine we have a mirror, okay? I have two items. There's the mouse and a phone, okay? So which is closer to me? The phone right now, right? Phone and mouse. But I have a mirror. And in the mirror, what do I see? I see the mouse again, and the phone is further, correct? Yes? Does this at all make any sense? If we had a mirror right in front of here, yeah? So the mouse would be closer in the mirror, and the phone would be further away. So what's closer is closer, what's further is further. Or what's further is closer, and what's closer is further.
Right. You know what it says in your car? Objects in the mirror
Are closer than
they appear.
they appear, right? No, but I'm saying in this case, relative, so to me, right? So to me, like this is closer. So this would be higher, this would be lower, right? This is higher, this is lower. But in the mirror, this is right there, and this is further up. So what's closer is really deeper in the source. You know what? Mirrors, no mirrors, it doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. Here's the Kabbalistic truth. What looks lower in the revealed sense is actually higher in the hidden realm. It's the inverse of the way it appears here, the way it is in its source.
The iceberg example, right? Because the iceberg is just the tip, and then its power is underneath it.
Right. So the way it works is that when something is manifest, so as things are emanated from God, right? So first comes Tohu, then comes Tikkun, right? The way it is above is that same inverse. Think of a diamond now, right? So you have the big light and then the smaller light, but in the source, it goes like that also, where you have Tohu, Tohu, Tikkun, Tikkun is really higher. If it's working, it's working. If it's not working, it's not working. It doesn't change the fact.
When the source, Tikkun comes first.
Correct. That's the point. So what appears, again, in our manifest reality, right? What appears to be this hierarchy, this rigid hierarchy of higher, lower, bigger, smaller, is actually inversed. It's flipped in its source. In its source, right? What is lower is really higher, and what's higher is really lower. That's the idea. That's the big
So
idea.
let's say we flip it, like if I was standing on the roof, to me, then I would be lower, with higher ways, everything, whatever is lower, like, the vantage point where you're seeing it. So now you say,
Exactly.
depending on the source, you have to flip the vantage point. So what, in my situation, what's higher is actually lower if you change.
If you change the perspective, it's the inverse of the situation. It's kind of like, even right hand, left hand, right? So if you and I are talking and I'm raising my right hand, to you, it's the left, right? It's the opposite, right? And vice versa. So you raise your left hand and I see it as your right side. So it's just vantage points are different. So necessarily the vantage point of us looking up and, if you will, God looking down is going to be the opposite. It's another way of conceiving it in our minds. But either way, the fact is this, that in manifest in the Seder Hishalshlut, which is manifest creation, what's higher and lower is actually inverted in the source. This is, by the way, a major Kabbalistic truth that repeats itself many, many times. This notion that what appears lowest is actually highest. So for example, the earth. This is a floor. Okay, outside, the earth, right? That seems like the lowest because everything's built on top of the earth. The earth is like the lowest. In Kabbalah, it's understood as the earth is the highest. And where do you see it? The fact that the earth is what gives rise to life. The earth gives food. The earth gives life, right? So the trees that grow higher than the earth, you think, oh, the tree is taller, the tree is higher. So the tree is up and the earth is down, so that's higher, lower. No, the tree doesn't exist without the earth. So in truth, the earth is greater than. So my point is simply this. In Kabbalah, oftentimes things are flipped. Things are inverse. What you think is higher, what you think is lower, in truth is the opposite. This is lower, that's higher. Same thing is true with Tohu and Tikkun. Tohu, which is this big, volatile, chaotic world with big light and small vessels, and Tikkun, which is like this little light, big vessels. That's all as things are manifest. But in their source, Tikkun, the realm of repair, is actually from a much deeper level than Tohu. So to kind of use what Marlene said a moment ago, not only is Tikkun in response to Tohu, we could look at it now a little bit differently and say that Tohu only exists because there's the ideal of Tikkun. In other words, we break it to fix it. So in the original intention is the fixing. Does that make sense? We broke it to fix it. That means that what's the original intention was the fixing. So on the deepest level, the initial movement, or even within the initial ideal is the Tikkun is a repair. Going back to my puzzle analogy, it's kind of like, you make a puzzle. How do you make a puzzle? You start off with a cardboard image. You take a jigsaw, you cut it up into pieces, you break it up, you throw it into a box. On the manufacturer side, you start off with the fix and then you break it. And when you buy it on the user end, it starts off broken and then you fix it. It's the inverse, right? The way we see it, first it begins broken and then we fix it. The way it begins in origin, it starts off, look at that, we stumbled on a nice analogy. Who would have known? Who would have thought? Right? On the originating originator level, it starts off whole and then becomes broken. So in truth, in origin, tikkun, the world of repair, is higher. Take a look at page 200 and let's read it in the original language. Again, in the original language, it's going to sound very mystical, but hopefully we've given some other ways of understanding this in our own lives. This is true of Tohu and Tikkun too. Tikkun, again, just to get the phrases. Tohu is chaos, Tikkun is repair. Tohu typically is understood to be higher than Tikkun, but now we're flipping it. Tikkun, the world of repair, is rooted in the essence of the infinite light, higher than the roots of Tohu. You see that? The ultimate objective is the fixing. So even though it plays out that first it's broken, and then you can't fix it if it's not broken. So first has to play out by breaking and then fixing. But the original intent, the deepest and the core essence of the infinite light of God, the core essence of this infinite light is Tikkun, higher than Tohu. In this sense, now he gets into Jacob and Esau. In this sense, the twins. In this sense, Jacob was the true firstborn. Jacob and Esau are symbols in Kabbalah of Tikkun and Tohu. Again, respectively, Jacob is Tikkun, Esau is Tohu. Now, who was born first? Who was born first? Esau, right? First you have chaos, and then you have repair. But that's only in birth. In origin, in conception, who's first? Jacob. That's what he's saying now, right? So Jacob and Esau are symbols of Tikkun and Tohu. And when we say that Esau was born first, that was, as the reason is because Tohu preceded Tikkun. But this refers only to birth and revelation. Jacob, however, was truly the firstborn, as Rashi observes from the verse, his hand seizing the heel of Esau, that this is comparable to a tube. What enters first leaves last. You ready? Jacob was conceived of the first seminal drop. So in his source, Jacob, Tikkun, is higher than Esau, Tohu. Are you with me on this? If you understand, again, he's explaining, Rashi explains this almost biologically, and we're explaining it now Kabbalistically, but the two are to match. So they were twins. Who comes out first? Esau. But that means that Jacob is just deeper inside, right? That means that Jacob is the first one who's conceived, the back. It's like when you load a truck. Give a very mundane example. You're loading a truck, yeah? The first stuff you load comes out last. So, sorry for being super mundane here, but Rashi says the same thing is true with the birth of Esau and Jacob. Who's born first? Esau. Who's born second? Jacob. But who was conceived first? Yeah, or Jacob and then Esau. And that's why Jacob, Esau, and then in Revelation, Esau, Jacob. Make sense? Yeah. Again, the mirror image. So this is the same thing of Tohu and Tikkun. Again, all of that is, the physical level, whatever it is, but it's all symbolic of what we're discussing today. And that is the realms of Tohu and Tikkun. Tohu is chaos. And in the birth realm, in the revealed realm, in the realms that we're aware of, first there's Tohu, chaos, and then Tikkun. And Tikkun seems like the younger sibling, the weaker sibling. Yeah. But in conception, in source, in origin, in truth, in essence, it's flipped. It's in first. Tikkun, repair, comes first. And again, just to break this down simply, it's because what is the original intention of all of this? The original intention is Tikkun. It's repair. That's the original intention. It's like getting back to my puzzle example, right? The original intention is a whole picture. But to make it interesting, first you have a whole picture. Then you break it up and you cut and break it up into small pieces. And then you put it back together again. So the beginning and the end are really intertwined. And the middle is where it gets a little bit wonky. All of this is to say, let's read it inside. Let the text itself finish it off. 200. Second paragraph. Let us apply this to the animal and godly souls. The godly soul in its source is superior to the animal soul. Right? You think that the animal soul comes first. The animal soul first appears in our body. The animal soul first influences our lives. We cry, we're hungry, we're tired, right? The animal soul has first dibs on our being. Then the godly soul comes in. The animal soul seems more powerful. It's emotion. The godly soul is only intellectual. It's rational. It seems lower. So it seems by all accounts, by all metrics, Animal soul is bigger, godly soul is smaller. That's all the way it appears. But in truth, the godly soul in its source is superior to the animal soul. Let's continue third sentence here. This gives it, second line, last word in the second line of that second paragraph, this gives it strength to overcome the animal soul. It derives strength from its source, the ultimate source. And since its source is higher than that of the animal soul, it follows that it does possess the power to dominate, in this case, to temper, control, mediate the animal soul. Although the animal soul possesses earlier effectiveness and influence over the body, in other words, in a revealed way, in a pragmatic, revealed way, the animal soul comes first. But since the godly soul ultimately has a higher source to draw strength from, it has the ultimate power to prevail. This is where we come full circle back to how we started this discourse number 13. We started by saying that it's a folly. The book is called Overcoming Folly. We're trying to overcome various things that we tell ourselves, stories, narratives that we tell ourselves that get us into trouble. One narrative that we tell ourselves is, I can't control myself. I can't. I get angry, I get triggered, and I can't. And what Discourse 13, chapters 1 and 2, what this section has been inspiring us to believe is that we can. Don't believe that you can't. Believe that you can. If you believe that you can't, you never will. If you don't believe that you can, then there's no hope at all. If you believe that you can, now we're getting started, right? Believe that you can rein in your temptations, desires, your natural, the negative emotions, whatever it is. Believe that you can. His question was, but who says you can't? Maybe the animal soul is just stronger than the godly soul. We've now come full circle to say no, because the godly soul comes from a higher origin, comes from a higher source, comes from a deeper source, and thus it always maintains the capacity to control, to rein in, to temper, to quell, to keep down the animal soul and its temptations. So what's the moral of the story? And we're going to get into the next discourse in a moment. But what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is it's very fitting that we're going to start discourse 14 in a moment, because it quotes from the opening chapter of Tanya, which is the big deal this week. So what's the moral of the story? Number one, we have the ability. We have that capacity for self-control inside, number one. Number two, we have to believe in it in order to tap into it. And when we catch ourselves thinking, I can't, I'm not able to, it's stronger than me, it's like, I can't, we have to replace that narrative within ourselves with a narrative that says, I can. The whole of a lot of this book is about rewiring the narratives in our brain. So it's about interrupting the narrative. Like there's typically a narrative, a story that plays out that we're not even aware of. It's about interrupting the narrative and saying, new information, breaking news, I can do this. And then things can change. Are they guaranteed to change? No. Is this a shortcut of doing the work? No, still have to do the work. But is this a way to put ourselves in a different place? Answer is yes. Yaakov, I see your hand up.
Yeah. It seems like that, whether we know things intellectually or not, it seems to be when we're feeling good about ourselves, we have the power to think positively. And then, when we're feeling bad about ourselves, then we just don't have the energy to deal with it. And we seem a little bit less energetic and more defeatist. So it seems like it's more almost like self-esteem rules the day, or self-confidence rules the day, whether we succeed or fail in this. And the other point, before you address that, is when I said the body is the third place of intelligence, I'm talking about the physical body. Like when we ask ourselves, hey, is this the right thing to do? A moral dilemma, whatever it is, generally the tightness in the stomach, that things don't feel, something just doesn't feel right. That's a
Right.
no. And then when everything relaxes, the muscles in our stomach relax and our chest and everything, the whole body feels right. If it feels right, it seems to be the infallible source, because the brain can be fallible. The emotions can certainly be fallible.
Interesting. So I don't know that I can, on that second part about the body itself. Thank you for clarifying that. I don't know that I can, definitively say either way, but it's a very interesting. I find your point very interesting and that angle very interesting. As far as the first part, I would agree with you. In fact, in Tanya, again, just referencing the Bible of Chabad Hasidic philosophy, literally called the Bible of Chabad Hasidic philosophy. So in Tanya, he says that you could have two. I think I even mentioned this recently. You could have two wrestlers, and based on their mood, their respective moods. Sorry, you can, and one might be objectively stronger than the other, but based on the mood of one versus the other, that might change the tide of the match. In other words, when one is feeling positive and the other one's feeling negative, one's feeling excited, one's feeling lethargic, then that could change the nature of the battle. So if we're struggling with ourselves, with what's going on inside, and we're not feeling good about ourselves, right? We're more likely to make the negative decision. Think about this in the context of any like resolution that we're taking, like a health resolution. So we resolve to whatever it is to be more healthy. And then the moment we have a setback in that area, so we then feel bad about ourselves. And that's more likely to cause us to go down a further negative path of additional negative choices in that area. In other words, the odds of like, okay, I messed up, but let me get back on track. It's much harder once we believe that we've messed up. Once we feel bad about messing up, feeling bad itself keeps us on that bad space. I don't know. I'm sure I'm saying something fairly obvious, but it's important. In fact, there's a Hasidic master that said once that the evil inclination doesn't care about the sin. Its goal is not to make us sin for the sin. The goal is to make us sin so that we feel bad about ourselves for sinning. And then once we feel bad, then that's it. Then anything is on the table. Once we're feeling low, like bad about ourselves, what do you call low self-esteem, or just feeling in a negative space, Pandora's box is open. Yeah.
One thing that's quite interesting, sports analogy, most like boxing movies and things, it's the underdog, he just wants to go the distance, and that's success. So to keep focused and do his all,
Right.
just to be in the game optimally, right? And because it'd be kind of, like you said, unrealistic, he's really not as powerful or skilled, but he's a winner if he just goes all beat up, but goes the distance.
Right.
Yeah.
Little Rocky reference or whatever. Look, I mean, I think you also have this sometimes in professional sports where, you have a team, like let's say football, like the last game of the season, before the playoffs, the one team needs to win to get into the playoffs. Another team had like have one, like they have nothing to lose. And they're looser, they're more relaxed. The other teams, right? Speaking like what Yaakov said before, like the team that needs to win is like very tight. Like they're nervous, they're anxious. And the other team is playing loose. And it could be, and that team, let's say, won one game the whole year. So they're clearly, I mean, by all, what we might measure, the inferior team, less than the other team. But it can go that way just because of other factors. So that is a very important factor. It's which ties into this whole discourse 13. It's about believing in ourselves and the ability to overcome. It's the belief in that keeps us positive. Okay, I'm passing out a new text, so you can put the old ones aside or whatever you want to do with them. But discourse 14, there's 3 copies there to pass down and 2 over here. Thank you very much. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it up on the screen. I want to start this. It really continues the theme, the narrative of what we just explained. It continues it in a beautiful way, and it quotes the first few chapters of Tanya. So again, Tanya, just to explain, the 19th day of Kislev is the anniversary of the liberation of Rabbi Schneur Zalman of Liadi, known as the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, in the year 1798. He was freed from Tsarist imprisonment. He was imprisoned on not true charges, but very serious, carrying a death penalty. Ultimately, he was exonerated and freed. but it's understood that it was a question, there was a spiritual element here as well, because he opened up the floodgates of teaching the hidden secrets, Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, the hidden secrets of Torah. And the question was, really, the spiritual question was, should that stop or should that continue? And upon his liberation, it went much bigger and broader. The fact that we're all studying these ideas, these deeper spiritual truths, is all due to this day, to the 19th day of Kislev, 1798. By the way, that celebration begins Monday night, or the day itself is Monday night into Tuesday. We're having something tonight, kind of a pre-19th Kislev celebration. But that's just a little bit about the day. So his main work that he wrote, the Alter Rebbe wrote, is the book of Tanya, and we're now going to bring in elements of the first two chapters of Tanya right here. So let's do this. Discourse 14, chapter 1. He says like this: we can now understand the words of our sages from the Talmud. It says, an oath is administered to him before birth, warning him, be righteous and do not be wicked. Let me explain this. The Talmud says that before the soul is sent down into the body, right? The soul is paired up with the body. Before the soul is sent into the body, the soul is given an oath. It's made to take a promise. And what's the promise? Be righteous, do not be wicked. So this oath is administered after the soul has been taught the entire Torah. That's what it says in the Talmud. Now it is written, the souls which I have made, from Isaiah, the souls which I have made. And the Alter Rebbe said in Tanya chapters 1 and 2 the following, and he quotes, this is a verbatim quote from Tanya, that this verse from Isaiah, the souls which I have made, doesn't refer to many people with many souls, but even within the same person, there are multiple souls. The souls which I have made, in every person, every individual has souls, has two souls. So now we quote, this is the indented text. This alludes to two souls. There is one soul which originates in the klipa and the sitra achra. That means the other side, the side of negativity, and which is clothed in the blood of the human being, giving life to the body, as is written, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. Okay, so there's one soul. We call this the animal soul. We call this the natural soul. We call this the lower self, whatever you want to call it. One soul is coming from a lower space. He says it's clothed in the blood of the human being. What does it mean? It's clothed, the soul is in the blood. He just means that this is it's like the physical, instinctual soul, life energy of the person, right? From it, he says, stems all the evil characteristics. Now, it's not evil, but from it stems the evil characteristics. That's a very important distinction. There's nothing wrong with this soul force, but it could lead to negativity from the four evil elements contained with it. These are anger. There are anger and pride, which emanate from the element of fire, the nature of which is to rise upwards, the appetite for pleasures from the element of water. For water promotes the growth of all kinds of pleasures, frivolity and scoffing, boasting and idle talk from the element of air, and laziness and depression from the element of earth. So you have all of these negative traits, all of these negative characteristics: anger, pride, pleasure seeking, hedonistic pleasures, right? Frivolity, scoffing, laziness, depression. All of these could be reasonably termed negative character traits. Well, where do they come from? They don't come from the godly soul. They come from the lower soul. They come from the lower self, right? What's the lower self? The lower self is all about self-preservation. So when I feel threatened, anger. When I feel like I did a good job, there's pride. When I want something, I seek the pleasure. Done, right? Frivolity and scoffing, or whatever that, and laziness, depression. All of it is about me. So let's continue. From this soul, this lower soul, stem also the good characteristics that are to be found in the innate nature of all Israel, such as mercy and benevolence. In other words, these also could lead to good. These also could lead to good traits. For in the case of Israel, the soul of the klipa is derived from klipat noga, which also contains good, as it originates in the esoteric tree of knowledge of good and evil. We don't have time right now to break this down. I'll do this next week as we begin. I'll go back a little bit like I did today and kind of like reset this. But here's the point. This lower soul is not evil. It's the source of negativity, but it's also the source of good things. Like if I want to give to you so that you'll give to me, right? but I'm being nice to you, but I'm expecting in return also something nice. So that's also from the lower self. Why? Because there's a bit of it's not unconditional giving. It's kind of like we're bartering. It's like I scratch your back, you scratch my back. So there's kind of like
More of a transaction.
a transactional relationship, but oftentimes we're kind and we're giving with the even if it's not overt, even if we don't say it even to ourselves, but there's an understanding that if I do this for you, you'll do this for me. Even in like you read kids books or you read like stuff about like morals and ethics, and oftentimes it's couched in do good to someone else because one day you'll need something also. There's like subtle, like it's ultimately it's self-serving. Ultimately it comes back to like this is going to benefit me. That's not from the godly soul. That's still from the animal soul. And as the animal soul can also understand that if I want this, I can either knock the guy out and get it, or I can help them and they'll give it to me. Even the animal soul can understand that there's different ways to get what you want, but it's still about getting what you want. The second soul of Israel is truly a part of God from on high. What's the second soul? The second soul is peace of God. It's completely selfless, as it is written, and he breathed into his nostrils a breath of life, and you breathed the soul into me. Is written the Zohar, he who exhales from within him. That is to say, page 204. I just want to finish off this quote from Tanya quickly, from his inwardness and his innermost. So when you exhale forcefully, see, when you talk, you can keep on talking, right? Pretty much, you don't have to catch your breath. But when you exhale with force, right? You have to breathe back in. I mean, you always have to breathe back in, but it's like it takes a lot out of you. So, for it's something that is eternal and innermost, for it is something of his internal and innermost vitality that man emits through breathing out with force. Last paragraph. So allegorically speaking, have the souls of Jews risen in the divine thought, as is written, my firstborn son is Israel, and you are children unto the Lord your God. That is to say, just as a child is derived from his father's brain, likewise to use an anthropomorphism, the soul of each Israelite is derived from his blessed thought and wisdom, for he is wise, but not through a noble wisdom, because he and his wisdom are one. Okay, all of this, and again, I know I went through this very quickly. The goal was to study a little Tanya enmeshed in our text. So we did a few paragraphs of Tanya here to get it in. What if I were to summarize this in very short, in 60 seconds, I would say the following. We have two souls. There's a lower soul and the higher soul. Same thing we've been speaking about, thus far. Animal soul, godly soul. What's the animal soul? It's not evil, but it's natural. It's not evil, but it's instinctual. It's about self. It's about self-preservation. It's about bettering self. So it could lead to negative. If I feel threatened again, I'm gonna strike out. If I feel, whatever it is, if I feel, if I'm triggered, then something's bad gonna happen. It could also lead to good things, right? If I feel like I want something, I might do something nice to get what I want. So it could also lead to good things, but it could also lead to bad things. It's about self. The second soul is completely selfless. It's a piece of God. And because it's a piece of God, it's not about me. It's about connection. It's about selflessness, whether it's for spiritual things or whether it's for the soul within someone else. It's completely selfless and giving. Where he's going with this is we're going to ultimately ask a question. The question is, we'll ask this next week, but I'm just foreshadowing the question. The Talmud says that before the soul comes down into the body, this is the godly soul. The soul is given an oath, be good and don't be bad. He's going to ask the question. You're giving it to the wrong party. You're giving the godly soul an oath. The godly soul is good to go. Like you should give it to the animal soul or to the body. Be good. Don't mess up. Why are you giving it to the godly soul? The godly soul is automatically plugged in. Are you with me in the question?
Yeah.
The godly soul is a piece of God. It's the higher conscious, the higher self. So why would you give the godly soul an oath? Yeah. Put your hand in the Bible and swear. Like, why would you it seems like you're addressing the wrong party. Address the animal soul, address the evil inclination, address the body, the parts that are susceptible to temptation, not the part that's always pure. So he'll give a beautiful answer next week about the meaning of the oath. The nature of the oath is not simply an oath. It's much more than that, but stay tuned for next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. So in summation, what we did today is we talked about Tohu and Tikkun, chaos and repair. We saw, at least initially, how chaos is big and powerful and repair is limited and small. But ultimately, repair, Tikkun, comes from a higher source than Tohu, than chaos. And that's why, no matter how big the challenge internally, we believe that we have the power to overcome using the tools that we have been given. We have the tools to overcome our inner challenges. And it's when we believe in that ability that we can exercise that ability. If we don't believe in it, we can't exercise it. If we don't believe that we can, then we won't be able to. So step one is know that you have the power inside. Number two, believe that you can actually conquer the temptation right now, this moment. Number three, just do it. If only life were so simple. But at least we have a bit of a meditative process. This is an empowering text. In a world that so often tells us how powerless we are, right? You can't do this, you can't do that, this happened, that happened, so you can't. Kabbalah tells us you can. It empowers us to believe in our abilities and to see that ability through. I hope that the gravity, the power of this message is coming through. I'm trying to the best of my ability to portray it. I hope it's coming through, and I hope this has been meaningful to you. I want to wish everybody a good Yom Tif, which means how do you translate good Yom Tif? Happy holiday. Doesn't sound right in English. A good Yom Tif, because not for Thanksgiving, also maybe for Thanksgiving, but primarily because, again, it's we're on the doorstep of the 19th day of Kislev, the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidic philosophy, and the opening up of the teachings of Jewish mysticism. So it's an appropriate time to think about commitments to increase our study of Jewish mysticism and our practice of practically doing good and positive things. So everyone should think of good resolutions, and please God, will continue to bring light into the world. We have this amazing confluence of so many things. The 19th of Kislev, then we have Hanukkah beginning next week, which is all about light, right? It's all about the light menorah in the window. It's about the light illuminating the outside. So indeed, let's continue to be torch bearers, carriers of light, to bring light into this world that so often is cold and dark. All right, questions or comments?
Great class. Thank you very much. Beautiful, beautiful. So empowered and so connected with to try to look the world in a different dimension. Like everything is so important because we can repair and repair and repair. That's beautiful.
Thank you. That's the main thing. The main thing is the fact, believing that we can fix, that we can repair. We have the power. Number one, inside, and then number two, of course, outside. Thank you. Mariana, please give my best to the family, to Alex and the kids. Always thinking about you guys. All right. Excellent.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to see you all. Good Yom Tif, and we'll see you guys soon. Don't forget tonight, if you're in town, tonight, join us 6 p.m. for a beautiful celebration. We got dinner and wine and music and inspiration and a brand new copy of the Tanya. I don't know if you can see this. This is from the publisher, Intown Jewish Academy, special edition, just made for us. All right.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Not the editor-in-chief, but I'm involved in it. So I got inside track.
Wow.
Right. All right, we'll see you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.